Over the past 5 years, there's been a rise in remakes of classic video games, from Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Final Fantasy, and even SpongeBob. If your series is popular enough, it'll have remakes of some sort, and it makes sense. Remaking classics so that gamers can experience what it's like to play the old game back in the day sounds like a no-brainer, and you'll surely get current fans to buy it because it's the thing they like, and it's shinier and newer. So what's the issue? Well, a lot of remakes tend to miss the mark when it comes to recapturing the experience of the original game. Whether that be a change in art style, clashing with how the original was presented, updated gameplay that can either be hit or miss depending on the genre, changes/censoring material that is deemed controversial in the modern game landscape, removing content that was present in the original games and charging people extra for it, or simply just not needing to exist.
You are a worthless bitch ass nigga.
Remakes now tend to just be soulless versions of great games. This did, however, spark a little fun idea I had. Game companies should stop remaking good games and start remaking bad games. I chose 3 games that I would want to see be remade from the ground up and throw out some ideas that I would make to turn these bad games into good ones. Will this ever happen in reality? No, but let me ponder in my little padded cell, hoping these trash games get a second chance. First game on this list that I want to bring up is Shadow the Hedgehog, and I know that's going to be pretty controversial to a bunch of Sonic artists, but most people universally say this is one of the worst Sonic games. The game simply wasn't built for you to go fast, which goes completely against what a Sonic game is in my opinion. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about the story structure, since that's basically what everyone talks about when it comes to this game. The thing that separates this game from other Sonic games is sort of commendable in concept. You got 3 paths for each mission: neutral, evil, and hero. Each path takes you down a small variety of routes, which if you want a number for all the paths, a total of 326 possible paths exist in this game. And for endings, there are 10 unique endings. Now this sounds like a crazy amount of replayability, but in all reality, what ends up happening is you're playing the exact same mission over and over again, grinding out different paths. While 22 missions sounds good, playing the same mission at least 15 times each time can get tiring. As for the endings, the scale goes like this: Pure Hero, where he is the goody good guy and defeats the black creatures. Neutral has him kill Eggman and take over the android army and flex that he is better than the OG Shadow. And the Pure Dark ending has him declare that he will rule the universe with all the Chaos Emeralds. The other 7 variations are slightly different from the aforementioned endings. If it were up to me, I would keep all the endings as they are, but make one crucial change to them. Like Adventure 1 and 2 and even Heroes, there is a true ending to this game that requires you to complete the other endings. I would personally cut down the required endings needed to unlock the true ending to either 3 absolute routes or somewhere around 5. That way you're still encouraged to change up the replays of the game while keeping it from getting boring. As for the story itself, I would definitely keep it the same. It's early 2000s edgy trash that puts a smile on my face. Shadow constantly saying damn will never get old to me. One thought I did have was the fact that since this game was originally shooting for a T rating, they could re-add the censored content. They changed it last minute once the ESRB introduced the E10+ rating. Some stuff that got removed were more depictions of blood, Shadow swearing even more, and the flashback of Maria getting shot originally showed her falling. I personally think it would be neat to have this back in the game, as it would just make it an even edgier edgefest. But I also understand that it would be a drastic tonal shift compared to the other Sonic games. Regardless, I think giving the players an option to enable this quote-unquote graphic content would be a nice compromise, similar to what Call of Duty campaigns do. Lastly, before talking about gameplay, I also would like the original voice actors to come back to this game. That sounds like a no-brainer, but it's also a trend for remakes to replace the OG VAs with new ones. Whether that be a cost-wise or just not caring, I'll probably never know. Now on to gameplay, and this also loops back into the branching paths. Most missions range from basic reach the goal for the neutral path to tedious tasks like killing every enemy or collecting items for the side of your choosing. I would say to vary up the hero/dark side by having more interactive gameplay in the level, like taking a certain path or helping out one side that doesn't involve killing or turning on switches. As for Shadow himself, he is very slippery to control, and his moves like spin dashing and sliding can feel underwhelming. I think the simplest change would be to have it be in the Generations engine, since that's what most casual fans consider the best playing Sonic game. I know this is just a really easy compromise, but I think that'll be the easy solution to fix most of his gameplay. Lastly, I mentioned the soundtrack. I think it's actually pretty good, and the opening for this game is definitely a top 5 openers for a Sonic game. If they were to remake the soundtrack, I hope they get the artists to come back to re-record the songs, but also give the player the option to turn on the classic music if they want to. I'm not sure on what the licensing would look like, but I'm tired of remakes/remasters not giving the player the option to turn on the OG music. Speaking of licensing, you might be asking, why don't they just port this to modern consoles and PC? To which I respond with, Sega can't. You see, this game, and by proxy Heroes, were made with the Renderware engine, which if you don't know, is actually owned by EA of all people. And knowing Sega, they don't want to fork over any money to EA, so they'd rather let this and Heroes be locked away on 20-plus-year-old hardware. Which begs the question of, would people actually play this supposed remake? I honestly believe so. Call it copium, but the past 5 years have actually been pretty good to the Sonic brand as a whole, with the movies reminding people that Sonic's actually fun and cool and not cringe and lame. On top of that, 2024 was Shadow's redemption year in a lot of Sonic fans' eyes. While the tie-in DLC for Generations was a bit questionable and downright worrisome if that was going to be Keanu Reeves' performance,
Chaos Control!
They actually did a great job in the film, and really brought the character back to the public consciousness. Heck, Sonic X Shadow Generations came out that year, and despite its iffy reception, most people would consider the Shadow part to be the best part of that re-release. They even brought back Black Doom in the game, so they still do care about Shadow's backstory. I think that with the hype around Shadow again, Sega has a golden opportunity to try again with their rekindled interests in a beloved character, but it is unknown if a Shadow remake will ever occur. If you are fiending for more Shadow content, you should check out the Reloaded mod. It's basically all the tweaks and fixes I suggested before writing the script. So, thanks, damn pricks. The next game I want to try to remake is the worst Yakuza game in most people's eyes, Yakuza Dead Souls. Released in March of 2012, Yakuza Dead Souls is a spin-off to the mainline Yakuza games. Unlike other spin-offs like Kenzan or Koryu, where they still have the beat-em-up style of combat, Dead Souls opts to go for a more arcadey third-person shooter approach, with zombies. Why zombies, you might ask? Because it was the hot trend during the early 2010s. Every game had zombies in it, and Sega wanted to tap into that market, especially with the Americans, if this pre-order trailer is anything to go by. Now this is where more drastic changes will be implemented, as this game is way more flawed than Shadow's game. In terms of gameplay, Dead Souls can feel a little clunky at first. The shooting is mostly lock-on, so you don't have to worry about aiming, but it does give you the option for ADSing, but it's with the left stick instead of the right stick for some reason. Easy first change, just swap to the right stick for aiming. Combat itself is decently fun, but it can get boring really quickly as there's no real variation to the shooting. Plus there's no actual fist fighting in this game, except for Kiryu's first chapter, but it controls like crap and you don't do any damage to the zombies. Now to alleviate the staleness of combat, I would take some pages out of Ishin, Zero's, and even Kiwami's book when it comes to multi-fighting styles. Instead of having 4 unique styles, I would cut it down to 3 for simplicity. Default fighting style, shooting style, and a combination of both fighting and shooting. That way you can have more variety in moment-to-moment gameplay, as well as keep the original game's gameplay intact. The game has 4 playable characters, but unlike Yakuza 4 or 5, they don't really play that different aside from their main weapons that they use. This change will definitely help spice up the gameplay, but in saying that, the upgrade system would also have to be reworked. Skill trees work a lot like the Yakuza 4, where almost everything is unlocked from the get-go and you can choose what skills you want. In terms of the map, I would probably add the rooftops in from Yakuza 4 just to give more options for traversal, since the map can be a little difficult to navigate. I would also add more places to exfil from the quarantine zone, since there's only one exit that changes with each part of the game. Dead Cells also has a partner system that is very hit or miss. While it is cool that you can team up with people like Date or RSA, they're only really good for taking aggro from the zombies. I know simply making their AI better isn't that easy, but making them more resistant to knockback or getting trapped by one singular zombie would be a nice quality of life improvement. Briefly talking about the performance, this game runs like crap. Now I was playing every game in this video on an emulator, so the performance will be better than their base console counterpart. But even still, this game dropped into the single digits occasionally in terms of frame rate, especially during the finale at the Millennium Tower. Hopefully the Dragon Engine could make this a smoother experience. Hell, just remastering this game for PC and modern consoles would be enough for some fans. I'll briefly touch on sub-stories, as I think for most of them, they're pretty decent. The main gripe I have with them is that a lot of the sub-stories have multi-parts, which just drag out the sub-story count a bit. There are 60 sub-stories, but 32 of them are multi-part sub-stories, so I would cut some of them down into one singular sub-story. Story-wise, I'd keep it the same. It's dumb and stupid and a complete tonal shift from the previous games, but seeing how the writing has gotten way more questionable since this game, this isn't really a big concern for me. What is a concern is the localization of this game. This also applies to Yakuza 3 through 5 on PS3. Seeing just how wrong the subtitles are for this game raises a bunch of red flags in my head. While I don't speak a lick of Japanese, I know that Majima calls Kiryu Kiryu-chan, just from him saying it. But in the subtitles, he says Cassie for some reason. Again, just a simple retranslation would be fine. Back to the story, it is just silly for most of it. I mean, Ryuji Goda comes back as a playable character, and his arc is actually pretty decent all things considered. Definitely a revival I'm fine with, since it's actually added on to the character and doesn't affect the mainline story. Cough cough. Now to conclude this section, I'll discuss why I doubt this game would get a remake anytime soon. Unlike Sonic, where he is still able to tank a couple bad games due to his sheer popularity, Yakuza was nowhere near Sonic's status of recognizability in the West. Dead Souls almost killed the series here, in America. The reviews say everything, even comparing it to Yakuza 3 and 4. It was really bad. It got so bad that it took them until 2015 to bring Yakuza 5 to the West, a whole 3 years after it was originally released in Japan. So suffice to say, they probably won't remake this game anytime soon, but there is still some hope. In later years, RGG has acknowledged and even made direct references to it in later games. In Yakuza 5, Gary's boot camp was still in Kamurocho despite it running on a newer engine. Yakuza Kiwami had the Majima Everywhere fight where you fought a zombie Majima, with one of the OSTs blasting in the background. And in both Judgment games had arcade machines themed around Dead Souls. I would personally settle for a Dead Souls remaster, but a remake would elevate it to a status of Kenzan or Ishin in terms of love and respect. I'll wait 10 years for it if I have to. 10 years. Now where would I want to spend that time? The last game I want to see remade is Devil May Cry 2. Now I'd like to preface this by saying that the original DMC is a fun game. Not perfect, and its age does show a little bit, but even now it's a fun game. I say that because DMC 2 is probably one of the worst sequels to any game ever, just for the sole fact it's a downgrade in almost every aspect compared to the first game. The entire game would need to be remade from the ground up, to the point where it would be a completely different game compared to the original. So let's start with the most egregious thing about this game: combat. In terms of combat, Dante is way slower compared to the first game. Not only that, but his moveset is also reduced from the first game. All the swords in the game barely have any differences to them. Only difference is that one sword has more damage but less range, the other one has more range but less damage, and the middle ground is Rebellion. First thing I would do to alleviate the combat is to speed up Dante's moves on par of the first game. Hell, Trish is an unlockable character that plays like Dante from the first game, so having this moveset would make it play a lot better. Swords, the short-term solution would be something simple like one sword is faster but weaker, and the other sword is stronger but slower. Moveset would be different enough to actually warrant playing differently with each sword. Staying on combat, guns in this game are straight up the best option for dealing with all combat encounters. Whether that's cannon fodder or bosses, shooting is the quickest and safest option. I see two options for this. Simply nerf the guns to be more balanced, or the crazy option: turn the game into Diet Bayonetta. Go all in on the game being gun focused. Takes inspiration from Lady's playstyle in DMC 4. She's basically what DMC 2 would be if it was actually good. The best of both worlds would be to have two styles that Dante can swap between. One being the standard combat that focuses more on melee, and the other that focuses on guns. That way you can still have the original gameplay of the OG intact. Level design is also a big point of contention in DMC2, because almost all the levels are giant hallways that don't have anything going on. Worst example of this is Mission 14, where it's the first mission again, except it's nighttime, and there are 4 switches on the map that need to be activated to progress. There is no indication as to where the switches are. They are in very difficult to hit spots. Most people would consider this to be the worst level in any of the Devil May Cry games. And that's kinda how the majority of the levels play in this game. I'd say cut down the levels by 20 to 30%, because most of the blow is just Dante walking around. Bosses are also a low point in this game. Most of them can just be gunned down with Devil Trigger, and they are very slow. I would say speed up their attacks and make them weaker to sword damage, while making them more resistant to gun damage. Lastly, Dante himself. He sucks in this game, personality-wise. He's probably the worst version of Dante, worse than Reboot Dante and the Netflix DMC Dante, in my opinion. He just doesn't have any soul to him. Now, I wouldn't want to make him like how he is in later games, as that would clash a bit with the general tone of DMC2. Ideally, I would make him more akin to DMC1 Dante, taking the situation seriously while also cracking a few jokes every once in a while. And that pretty much covers that for DMC2. So now we theorize why it probably will or will not be made. Obviously, Capcom is afraid of this game like the plague. This game almost killed the franchise the first time, and taking a risk on a game this infamous would be a very difficult task. Plus, if we are looking at semantics, DMC 1 is probably going to be remade first, since it is older, and if you want the cynical perspective, DMC 3 will probably be remade before 2, simply since that's the most popular one behind 5. But then again, Capcom treats any IP that isn't Resident Evil like a neglected child. Still, like all the other games in this video, I like to take some copium every once in a while, and escape the hellscape that is modern video games. Now if you excuse me, I have to get back to my cell now.